What's the benefit of being married over just being together forever? Story 1: Legal rights. Classic tragedy is for a couple to spend their lives together unmarried, which works fine until one of them dies and their family steps in as the legal next of kin and leaves the surviving partner destitute. Story 2. My sister's partner of 7 years passed away while they were engaged. They had lived together and were financially combined. The day after his death, his family, who he had a very limited relationship with, changed the locks on the house and wouldn't allow her access to her things without permission and an escort. They were vile. Had they been married, she would have been in more control of the funerary proceedings and management of their assets. It added to an already horrible situation. Story 3. We get some tax benefits, and we are also each other's automatic next of kin. A big part of why we got married was to make it much harder for our toxic mothers to lay claim on our assets or make medical decisions if something happened. Story 4. My spouse says that filing one tax return instead of two was worth it for her. She hates administrative tasks. I was with my partner for 15 years before we got married, and we never really thought marriage was necessary. The legal protections around our health, assets, and children are great. You can get these things through legal means, but that would have cost more than our at-home wedding. Depending on employer, unmarried couples can get on each other's health insurance plans. I found getting married to really make me think about our future in a different way. Maybe we just grew up. I find being married to someone who has the same goals for the future to be compounding. You could get this through a long-term commitment, but I think it takes a special pair to buy fully into it without marriage. Plus, in marriage there is legal recourse for a spouse that was underemployed in a marriage that don't exist in no-marriage situations. My mom was a stay-at-home mom by agreement with my dad most of my life. She gave up 15 years of full-time earnings and advancement to stay home. She worked hard and ran out home. My dad worked fairly long hours and did not help at home. In a long-term partnership, he could have left her and gave her nothing, and she had no career to fall back to. Instead, they divorced, and she got around half of the assets of the marriage and some alimony. She deserved this because she put in the work to allow him to work in the way he wanted to. It was fair and not contentious. Story 5. A lot of people bring up the fact that the rights granted by marriage can be approximated with the correct powers of attorney and wills. Well, think of the fact that marriage is an internationally recognized concept, and especially if you're a straight couple, unfortunately, your particular marriage will be recognized without question wherever you are. If your unmarried partner has a health event during your vacation overseas, is that when you want to figure out if your power of attorney is valid here? Get it translated and apostilled, find a local lawyer, triangulate with your embassy, all the while your partner needs you at their bedside. Story 6. My husband and I finally pulled the trigger on getting married, because he needed health insurance and it would let me put him on mine. But there are a lot of good legal benefits: being able to make medical decisions if they're hospitalized, protection in case of a breakup, especially if one partner doesn't work, making your partner your heir, the aforementioned American healthcare law surrounding spouses specifically, immigration benefits if you ever leave your country. If you have a significant income disparity, there are likely to be tax benefits. There were for us. Favorable treatment under certain laws. My state had homeownership provisions for the spouses of military vets, as one of many examples. Another commenter calls out survivorship benefits and 401k rollover benefits. There is a reason the LGBT community fought so hard for marriage rights as a goal. It was a generation that were kept out of hospital rooms, out of deathbeds, out of funerals by their partner's family because without a marriage, they had no legal rights. Some of those things you can get by signing the right paperwork, and I strongly advise everyone, single or otherwise, to get living will and medical power of attorney sorted out. But not all of them, and many people won't think to do the paperwork until it's too late. Story 7. I didn't see the point to marriage until we got married. You feel reassured, stable. It made us feel a whole lot closer to one another, which I wasn't sure was possible. Legal benefits. Easier to transfer estate/wealth/investments should either of us pass away. The wedding, however, we had 40 guests, and if we were to do it again, it'd be a micro-wedding for sure. 8, 10 guests at most. We did it on the cheap and spent around $12K. It was an amazing day, but I don't know that we really got anything more out of a 40-person $12K wedding than an 8-person $3K wedding. All we wanted was good food and a great photographer, and memories with the people we loved the most. Story 8. Plenty of tax and legal benefits. Social Security survivor benefits, for example. There may be tax breaks or not. It depends on your respective incomes. Assets can generally be transferred to your spouse tax-free if you die. You may be eligible for family rates for things like insurance. This varies. Generally, your spouse will be consulted on medical issues if you are capable of deciding. This is more convention than law, however. Story 9. Insurance. My now wife and I were together 16 years unmarried. She decided she wanted to retire at 62, but would be ineligible for Medicare, and the exchange policies were hideously expensive. As a federal employee, I could add my wife to my plan and keep my plan in retirement. So my marriage proposal was, do you want to share my health insurance? I'm the last of the great romantics, I guess. Story 10. You are automatically next of kin. This is crucial when you consider a possible need to make medical decisions. Automatic inheritance in UK, even if there is no will. Automatic parental responsibility. This is not the case for parents if one dies and they are not married. Marriage is basically a contract enforced by the government to recognize your status in the life of your spouse, ensuring that you are their voice and advocate in a worst-case scenario, and that you are compensated accordingly in various ways. I'd note that in our society, generally, marriage is still seen as the most valid form of partnership. There are benefits in that perception, though they are less tangible. Story 11. To me, one of the nicest things is being able to refer to my wife as my wife. People just get it when you say wife/husband/spouse about the nature and seriousness of your relationship in everyday conversation. The same is not true for girlfriend/boyfriend/partner. No one understands if you say you need to check with your girlfriend before you say yes to an invitation or make a purchase decision, etc. It is just so much easier to say wife. Story 12. Marriage is a social construct, but guess what? We all live in a society. Marriage is a system that has laws and rights going back and being built over generations. Society and the law understands and builds itself around the concept of marriage. So while you can just spit out individual benefits, the bigger deal is that the system will be able to work around people married together, but might have glitches and not fit well for people cohabitating together, but informally. Story 13. Survivor benefits being able to legally make decisions for each other. My BIL just passed last Friday. He was with his longtime lady friend of 37 years, though we didn't contest any of her decisions regarding his final affairs, simply because they have been together so long. Who are we to dispute what plans they had for each other? But not all family members would feel that way. They will fight till the bitter end, especially if money is involved. Story 14. Marriage is much more than a piece of paper. It grants medical rights, right to be in the room, and DNRs and more. It gives you tax benefits and insurance benefits as well. Car insurance is much lower when married. Inheritance is smoother when married. Also, culture issues. Unmarried couples cannot travel to certain countries due to morality laws and hotel issues. Marriage is also a beautiful promise to your partner to be loyal and devoted to them forever. I've been married for 2 years and I feel so stable and peaceful. The medical stuff is really good to have in case of accidents, etc. Also, my husband is the greatest man I've ever met, and I feel eternally grateful to be his wife and soulmate. I recommend speaking to your partner about all this, specifically the legal and medical stuff. Story 15. My wife and I were together for 7 years before we got married. Once we got married, we combined finances properly, added each other to all of our documents and everything like that. Ever since then, it's been like a 180 for me as far as stress goes. It's not that we ever treated each other badly, but now it's like we both know that we are committed forever. So I've noticed that we are more patient than we were before. We did some couples counseling, which also helped to establish togetherness. Story 16. Besides all of the other great reasons listed, if you and your spouse have done a great job of selecting a suitable partner, then the legal equivalent of an unbreakable oath forces you to work on your relationship, instead of taking the easy way out and quitting. I'm not saying there aren't unhealthy marriages that need to end in divorce, but most people, I think, should approach relationships and sexuality seriously to the point where, when they get married, they are comfortable making a till-death commitment. Speaking for me and my wife, assuming that divorce is not an option, has forced my wife and I to grow up, become better people and parents, and break a lot of seemingly innocuous but sinister habits left from precious relationships. Story 17. I think it's really important to remember that getting married is a legal process. The importance of a marriage license is not necessarily for when things are good. It's for protection for when things go bad. Like others have said, making medical decisions, but also when a relationship ends. It's critical for those stay-at-home parents that devote their lives to supporting their spouses' careers and raising the children and need alimony after the end of a relationship. I always recommend couples be married if they're buying a house together because the process is so messy, trying to divide assets without legal protection. Story 18. Beyond legal rights, legitimacy. Fair enough if an individual, male usually, feels indifferent or comfortable with the perception of an illegitimate relationship, but society has different expectations for women. There is a reasonable expectation of stigma if a woman is with someone for an extended period of time and doesn't get married. Shame is not worth the principle in most cases. Story 19. I don't know why anybody suggesting what a liability it is to be married is being downvoted thanks to no-fault divorce. The whore who cheated on me and kept it hidden for half of the marriage gets to lay claim to half of my retirement plans for the marriage, while she spent the same amount of time cleaning hers out. She makes more than I do. I endured physical and emotional abuse frequently after we tied the knot. Guess how much the state cares? Zero. Did she contribute to the home? Nope. But since I used my income to cover bills, mortgage, everything, that was our money, while she was free to run her accounts to zero at Target and on Amazon every pay period. Did she contribute to the kids' education accounts? Nope. And the cherry on top? 18 months into this fucking process, and she successfully dragged it out because she gets to use my benefits on her cosmetic surgeries, dental, etc. She gets to collect all of the interest that accumulates on investment and retirement accounts, equity growth in the home she turned her back on to fuck a junkie who works in a grocery store, and a dirtbag cheating on his own wife, among others. She gets a leg up on everything. She quit one job and nobody is pointing fingers at her, altering her annual income to bring it in line with mine. I don't get to change my job and reduce my hours to meet the requirement for true blue 50/50th custody because I likely won't find one where I also make an equal salary. I'm gutted, not so much as a fucking apology, and now I get to start my entire adult life over with half of my time already missing from the clock, only getting to be a father 3+ days a week, and 25% of my take-home, post-tax pay gifted to her by the state, tax-free on her end. Why shouldn't I foot that bill too? Make no mistake, the concept of marriage is a wonderful thing, but you are delusional if you think it's not a liability as a man to get married. Family law doesn't care that they're a shitty person. They want nothing to do with hearing any of it, that they broke all of the contract, the vows, whatever you want to call it. Prenup? Yeah, about as valuable as the paper it's printed on. I do want to add the caveat that obviously my experience will not be like everybody else's. I married somebody that had a very convincing mask that exploded off of her face within months of getting married. Do your due diligence before getting married. Don't have small talks about it and say good enough. Sit down and have the difficult discussions. Know your partner's debts coming into the marriage. Really reflect on anything that's so much as a hint of a red flag regarding their maturity, suitability for marriage. Observe their habits, the good ones and the bad ones. Are things done transactionally? Is there mutual grace given and received? Is it something where you need to be forever entwined with this person? Or is it social, familial pressure to get on with the next step in your relationship? Do you know and unquestionably respect the absolute boundaries of your partner? Do they know and respect yours? Do all of these things for yourself as well. And be fucking honest. Don't delude yourself and say something will get better once you're married, that they'll change or you yourself will grow out of a habit that drives you or your partner crazy. Story 20. Marriage at the legal level is a contract. Despite appeals from religious institutions that it's a sacred bond, as far as the state is concerned, it's a matter of property, inheritance, taxation, and things like power of attorney and medical decisions. In same-sex marriages, this provides the same protections in their partnership. Churches are welcome to add their flair to weddings, but without the license, it's not valid. The state, in my opinion, has no interest in what the two parties do in their relationship, despite claims that marriage is exclusively for procreation. If that were the case, sterile people or elderly people beyond childbearing age would also have no reason to be married. Historically, marriage often had additional implications in terms of tying families together, dowries, alliances, control of provinces, and so forth. Marriages were sometimes arranged, sometimes men had multiple wives, some were child brides. Thankfully, we've mostly moved past these practices. Common law marriage often resolves legal questions when two unmarried partners live together long enough. I'm very much not a lawyer, just relaying a few points an actual lawyer told me when the Obergefell decision came down. Story 21. I'm kind of shocked by these comments. The primary benefit of marriage is it signifies and solidifies the commitment between two people to move through life together. It's not about taxes or insurance or being next of kin, although that's an added bonus. Marriage is about building a life together with a binding commitment, whether legal or spiritual. It's about much more than love. Love is not enough to sustain a marriage. It's hard to explain unless you're married and married to the right person. But it's about intertwining your lives and souls. When done right, there is nothing more fulfilling and rewarding. Story 22. It really depends on your definition of marriage and together forever. To me, marriage is the action signifying together forever. I got our families together, and vowed to never separate, while knowing full well that something like infidelity can potentially occur. In today's culture, marriage is often, we are together until unfaithfulness. Of the marriage gets hard or major differences in wants cause conflict. To actually answer your question from my POV, and certainly not the only, promising to stay together forever regardless of outcome is mostly the same as marriage, but it includes the fact that your families and your community, religious or not, are aware of that promise. For a simpler terms, we're together forever is like saying, I promise I won't skip your birthday. V's. We're married is like saying, I give you my word, come any outcome or any emergency, any new revelations or any change in our friendship, I will not skip your birthday. Story 23. I didn't think it would feel any different afterward. We had already been living together for 5 years and were fully integrated, but I was wrong. Making a giant declaration of love in front of all of the people who mean the most to us, making the commitment that carries weight and consequences beyond just our feelings for each other, and the knowledge that we both wanted it as badly as the other made us feel so much closer in a way I've never experienced before and still don't have the vocabulary to accurately describe. I still get chills remembering our wedding vows and the feeling that someone loves me so much that they'd go through the nerve-wracking process of a wedding. It was the best day of my life so far. Story 24. Also, when it comes to parentage, a woman's husband is assumed to be her child's father unless proven otherwise. Whereas if the child's parents aren't legally married, the father of the child has no rights to the child until his name has been put on the birth certificate. My child was hospitalized after delivery, and my husband was able to provide immediate consent for her medical treatment. He wouldn't have been able to do this if we weren't legally married, as I hadn't yet complete the birth certificate.